The morning light streamed through the towering glass panels of St. Mary's Hospital, painting the floor in golden streaks. Yet, inside the waiting room, no brightness could pierce the cloud of despair that lingered in the air. Among the shuffle of hurried nurses, and the low murmurs of restless patients, a single voice broke through. Fragile, cracking, and soaked in desperation. A young mother, her clothes frayed at the seams and a worn teddy bear dangling from her arm, clutched her fragile daughter tightly to her chest. With trembling knees, she collapsed before the reception counter and cried out. Her words, carrying the rawness of a breaking soul. "Please, someone, please save my daughter." It was more than a cry. It was the shattering sound of a heart bearing too much pain. Some people turned their heads, eyes filled with pity, others with cold detachment. But no one moved closer. To them, she was just another wary figure lost in the blur of an uncaring world. Yet fate, with its strange timing, had placed someone in that hallway that morning. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. A man of immense power, privilege, and wealth. A man whose choices shaped companies, markets, and fortunes. His name was Adrian Cross, one of the richest men in the nation. And what he witnessed that morning would alter the course of his life forever. If you believe in compassion, in redemption, and in the extraordinary strength of kindness, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Limitless Truth. Comment below and tell us why stories of hope still matter in today's world. Adrian had only stepped into the hospital for a brief board meeting regarding the construction of a new medical wing funded by his foundation. His time was measured in luxury. Private jets, polished deals, fast-moving appointments. He had no reason to linger in the crowded waiting hall. Yet, just as he passed the counter, his stride faltered. There she was. A woman kneeling on the cold tile floor, arms wrapped around a little girl with pale cheeks and a chest that rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. The sight rooted him to the ground. Her name was Marissa Lena. Once a promising student with dreams of teaching, life had stripped her of nearly everything. Her partner had abandoned her when their baby Sophie was only months old. From then on, Marissa survived by juggling 3 cleaning jobs, often skipping meals so her child could eat. Poverty etched itself not just in her worn jacket and tired shoes, but in the weariness that weighed on her shoulders. And yet, her eyes told a different story. They glowed with an unyielding love. The fierce love of a mother fighting against the impossible. For weeks, little Sophie had been slipping away. A fever that refused to fade. Weakness that stole her strength. And a cough that grew sharper each night. The doctors had been clear she needed urgent treatment, and it came with a cost far beyond Marissa's reach. She had pleaded with charities, knocked on doors, prayed for mercy. But each answer was the same. Sympathy without help. Now, as the receptionist repeated coldly, "We can't begin the treatment without payment." Her cries echoed down the sterile hallway. "She's just a child," Marissa begged, her voice breaking. "Take me instead. Do whatever you want. But don't let her die. Please, I'll do anything." Her words sliced through Adrian's chest like a blade. Something long, buried stirred inside him. His empire had been built on tough negotiations, and the iron belief that people controlled their own fate. But here, staring at a woman who had given everything and still been defeated, he saw the truth he had spent years ignoring. Sometimes, failure wasn't about laziness or weakness. Sometimes, life simply crushed people beneath burdens too heavy to carry alone. He could have walked past. He could have told himself, "This isn't my responsibility." But instead, his steps carried him forward. When Marissa lifted her tear-stained face and met his eyes, she didn't see a billionaire. She saw a man, perhaps the only man, who might still have a heart. Adrian leaned close to the nurse and spoke firmly. "Prepare the child for immediate treatment. All expenses will be charged to my account." The nurse blinked in shock, then hurried away. Marissa gasped, clutching Sophie tighter, terrified the moment might dissolve like a dream. Through her tears, she whispered, "Why? Why would you do this for us?" Adrian's eyes dropped to Sophie's tiny hand gripping the worn teddy bear. Clinging to innocence despite the sickness. His voice was steady when he finally answered. Because no child should suffer for what the world failed to provide. And no mother should have to beg for the mercy that should already be hers. The hours later, as Sophie underwent the life-saving procedure, Marissa sat outside trembling, caught between fear and fragile hope. Adrian sat beside her. His designer suit and polished shoes, wildly out of place on the plastic chairs of the waiting room. Yet his presence was a comfort she could not explain. Memories returned to him. Memories he had buried under layers of wealth. Long ago, he too had lived in poverty. His own mother had given up meals, worked herself sick, and endured endless nights of hunger just to keep him alive. He had spent years ignoring that past. But Marissa's pleas had torn open the walls he built, forcing him to remember the power of a mother's love. When the doctors returned, their words brought relief. Sophie had stabilized. The treatment was working. Marissa collapsed into tears. This time tears of gratitude. She tried to thank Adrian, but words could not carry the weight of her heart. And Adrian wasn't done. He learned of her struggles, the endless jobs, the constant battle with rent, the exhaustion that defined her days. Quietly, he made a decision. He arranged for Marissa to join his foundation with flexible hours and steady pay. Not a handout, but an opportunity to live with dignity. He created an education trust for Sophie, ensuring her future would not be chained by poverty. Marissa shook her head, overwhelmed. You don't even know us. Why go this far? Adrian allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Because once, long ago, someone gave my mother and me a chance. And it changed everything. Now it's my turn to pass that gift on. The story of Adrian Cross and Marissa Lane traveled quietly at first, whispered by hospital staff, then carried further by those who had witnessed it. In a world too often drowned in greed and apathy, one act of kindness sparked a light. A billionaire who once seemed untouchable had chosen to kneel beside the broken. And that choice saved not only a child's life, but reshaped the future of an entire family. As the sun dipped low that evening, Marissa held Sophie against her chest. Her daughter's breath was stronger, her cheeks gaining color once more. For the first time in years, Marissa felt something she thought life had stolen forever. Safety, hope, and the belief that miracles still walk among us. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Limitless Truth. Because in the end, compassion outweighs wealth, and a single act of kindness can change the course of countless lives.